the 176th California Nevada Annual Conference session. Over 750 clergy and elected lay delegates gathered at the Sacramento Convention Center on last Friday morning. Picture. So this is a picture that I took. Bishop Carcaño exclaimed, "What a joy it is to see you, my friends," before officially announcing the beginning of the 176th annual session of the conference. "A joy to my heart, it's a wonderful joy to my eyes. I give thanks to God for all of you," she said. Next. Guest preacher Bishop Gregory Palmer, the longest-serving active bishop, shared about what it means to follow Jesus. He said, "We like to evolve slowly so that we don't notice any change. Wondering if delegates were prepared to follow Jesus if it meant change. God is helping us to die to what we have been." In conclusion, Bishop Palmer encouraged the members to not worry about saving the church. Instead, focus on saving the world. The conference offering were collected to the scholarship funds for the young people from the West Angola Conference to Africa University. So it's a seminary that United Methodist denomination created decades ago. I believe when Bishop Leontine Kelly, whom she ordained me at the annual conference 35 years ago. No. Well, I've been serving for 40 years, so it has to be like maybe 39 years ago she ordained me. At that time, there was a two-step process. You get ordained as a deacon, and then from there, you get ordained as an elder after 2 years or longer to be proven that you had the goods to become a pastor. So anyway, so our church gave $300 to the special annual conference collection to go to Africa University. After lunch, the session focused on the action of the recent 2024 General Conference held in Charlotte, North Carolina, as well as the financial impact of disaffiliation. So that means denomination as a whole will have less money coming in because close to 1/3 of United Methodist churches have disaffiliated. And mostly in the South, red states, like if you look at Texas, it's about 1/3 they disaffiliated. And those churches that are disaffiliating are really mega churches of thousands, several thousand member, conservative, theology. Those churches, they have left. But we have left the process open for any time when the congregation decides to come back. There is a way to come back into United Methodist Church. So that door is open to all the disaffiliating churches, which is nice. Because, people change. Congregation change. Majority of the congregation may say, we don't buy into accepting LGBTQ people for ordination and gay marriage being done at the church. But as they see their children and grandchildren who may be gay And then they realize, wait a minute, I feel differently now. And as time goes, I believe it's going to move more and more toward normalizing and seeing LGBTQ people just like any other ordinary humans that we all are, and that they belong to human race just like rest of us. So I think, as Martin Luther King will say, the arc of history is long, but it bends toward justice. So I have hope in that. Michael Pope, conference lay leader and a lead delegate to the General Conference, spoke. Your delegation worked mightily and for a long time, for 35 years. We did a new thing together. Next picture. This is not Michael Pope. This is Emily Ellen. She was also a lay delegate to the General Conference, and she was a chair of the General Conference Agenda and Calendar Committee. And she gave her testimony how this was a long-awaited event. Okay, so who is Emily Ellen? When I was serving First Palo Alto, she was just a kid, and she went through a confirmation class, that I led. She, she's grown up. She's a leader of our church, leader of our conference. It just fills my heart to see her that. So actions taken by General Conference included approval of revision of the social principles and removal of exclusionary language for LGBTQ plus persons. So next picture. So her parents, so there's Emily Ellen on the left, her mother, and her father, Rick. They were members of the church when I served First Palo Alto, and so they came as lay delegates to lay members to their First Palo Alto church with their daughter. So it was a beautiful to have a reunion and to take photos together. And Rick, by the way, one of the things that he did was he got this bread machine, and he will make bread every Sunday morning, and he will have it all sliced it and put them in a bag. And after the church, as kids running around in a patio area, and he will give bread, and kids were munching on it, and it was warm and it was good. And he did it for a long time. And I said, are you still continuing to do it? He says, no, I retired from that. But he had a cane. Yeah. Other actions included a decreased general church apportionment percentage, new clergy retirement plan, allowing deacons to offer sacraments in their ministry setting. So before, deacons weren't able to practice sacraments like baptism and communion, but now they have gave authority and blessings for deacons to now do sacraments. And in United Methodist Church, there are 2 sacraments. How many sacraments in the Catholics? 7, 8, 9. All of you are in the ballpark. One of them is the right number, but my senior brain can't recall. I think either 9 or 7, but it could be 9 or 7. But United Methodist Church says all those sacraments are not practiced by Jesus in the gospel. So only two things that Jesus saw it as a sacrament, and they are baptism and Holy Communion. And also, there was an official apology to victims and survivors of a sexual misconduct in the church. So being a second largest Protestant denomination in the United States, of course there's going to be sexual misconduct by clergy, youth pastor, church leaders. And so they made official apology to all the victims and survivors of abuse, sexual abuse. And U.S. active bishops reduced from 39 active bishops to 32. So that's a reduction of seven bishops. And the reason for that is because of disaffiliation. And so because of the shrinkage of churches, they can no longer support 39 conferences with 39 bishops and all their supportive staff and institution. So what they're going to do is they're going to merge some conferences based on their sizes and whatnot in proximity. So it's like, but Western jurisdictions, we're not losing any of our conferences or bishops. We're going to retain 5 conferences and 5 bishops in our Western jurisdictions. And so there are 2 bishops that are retiring. Bishop Carcaño, our current bishop, is retiring as of end of August. And then beginning of September 1st, we'll receive a new bishop. And then the second bishop who's retiring is Bishop Karen Oliveto. Karen Oliveto, who was serving the mountain at Rocky Mountain Conference. She's retiring. She was the first gay bishop to be ordained, to become a bishop. And she came out of our conference. She was a pastor of our conference for decades. And then at the Western Jurisdictional Conference, she was elected as a bishop, and she was then assigned to Rocky Mountain. So normally when 2 bishops retire at the Western Jurisdictional Conference, there will be an election of new bishops. And in our case, it'll be 2 bishops because 2 are retiring. But this year, we're not electing any bishops. Why? Because leftover bishops, with the shrinkage in the east of our Western jurisdiction, they're out of their bishop positions. So those two of bishops will be transferring to serve Rocky Mountain and California, Nevada conferences. So there was a conference young adult delegate, Kristen Choi. She was a Korean American from Mount Tamalpais, UMC in Mill Valley. And during the morning devotional, she stated, "To follow Jesus is to serve and be for others with God's power," she said. "Anyone who would hold back, I'm calling you, whether young or not, new to the church or not, whoever you are and whatever you are, serve," the young woman said. It was beautiful. She was a youth. Dr. Randall Miller, a lay delegate to the General Conference. So next picture. Dr. Randall Miller, a lay delegate to the General Conference and an activist in changing the church stance on homosexuality, stated for the last 35 to 40 years, this annual conference, meaning our annual conference, has led the church in welcoming LGBTQ plus folks in our midst. Our conference, of all the conferences, is the most progressive conference in our denomination. And for 35 years, we actively elected delegates, clergy and lay, who will work toward changing our church policy toward homosexuality. And so they chipped away. Every year we'll send these delegates, and they work, changing the language and whatnot, until this year when it finally went over the hump. So he was elated. So he was saying how our conference, even though we may not be large as other conferences, we were instrumental in making this change. So he said the work that we have done together have changed the church. At the General Conference, a long-awaited, marvelous change has happened in the United Methodist Church, he said. And then he said, Dr. Miller noted that the social principles of the UMC are not considered church law, but serve as prophetic statements that we should aspire to live out. And so you see people, cheering and celebrating the work of our delegates over the past 35 years. And the final day of our labor has come to its fruition. Next picture. So this is Eitan Abriel, who's our El Camino Real district, which we belong to. He is the district lay leader. District lay leader. And his name is Eitan Abriel. And I had an opportunity to stand and give a little personal testimony when I was given that opportunity. And he was so, according to his words, that he was so deeply touched by what I had to say, he sought me out during a break. And so we decided to have lunch together. So Eitan he has an amazing personal story. He grew up in East Texas in abject poverty. When he was an infant, his father left the family. He was raised by his single mother, who really struggled with her own personal life. And so he was raised by his grandmother, and somehow he found his way to go to Stanford. I think he got a full scholarship. So he went to Stanford, and he got an employment at a giant tech company. And he's doing well. And he's recently got married, and he proudly showed his newlywed wife. And she was beautiful, and he was so happy. So anyway, I found his life to be just beautiful. That even in the worst situation that you can come out of, he's able to make a life for himself. And it was a beautiful success story. So anyway, I told him to come and preach at our church. So he's now in Philippines. Oh, by the way, he was raised by a Filipino family. So so he's half black, half Spanish. His father was Spanish. I'm sorry. His father was black. His mother was Hispanic. But then her mother and grandmother had relationship with this Filipino family. So he said he was raised by a Filipino family. So he's now in Filipino visiting those folks that they have connections with. So this is amazing. So one day he'll come and preach at our church, which he committed to do. During the district superintendent report, the cabinet presented recommendation of closure of following churches: San Juan UMC and New Fruit UMC of South San Francisco. And each church, when they present a recommendation for closure, and they give a little report, a little history of the picture and why they came to that decision to close. And then the entire voting members have to approve before it can be closed. So unanimously, these churches were closed. And then they acknowledged retired pastors who were brought out of their retirement to serve churches because of the shortage of clergy. And especially churches that are really shrinking and they can't afford a full-time. And so they have a 3/4, half-time, and even 1/4 time out in the boonies somewhere, all over the place. Not just in the boonies, in the cities too, but they're still not yet ready to close. And so they are asked if they live in a proximity of these churches that are needing to fill with appointments. I know you're retired, but you live, 15 miles away from this church. Would you be willing to do a quarter time or half time, whatever? And they come out. And it was amazing how many of them came up and, brought forward to acknowledge them. And I was joking with a person next to me, this feels like an entire clergy. It was like 40, 45 retired clergy currently serving, including Pastor Clyde, who is, I believe, 82 or 84. And he's serving Boulder Creek UMC. So bishop can appoint retired pastor. So in the United Methodist Church, when you reach 72, it's a mandatory retirement. I'm 66, so 72 is a mandatory. But the bishop can override it by renewing it annually. So in the case of Clyde, Pastor Clyde, he's been renewed that many years following his 72-year retirement. He's renewed every year, and he's continuing to serve, and he loves it. He loves it because it's a quarter time, and he only preaches one Sunday a month. A first Sunday where he does communion, and then he's able to go, travel and whatnot, and he's in charge of pastoral care and whatnot. But meantime, lay people and others just, lead the service without ordained clergy. Reverend Samuel Yoon, chair of the core team, introduced and thanked the core team members and explained the core team function. Those of you who are concerned about the time, this is primarily my sermon. So relax. The core team gets things done by asking others to roll up their sleeves and get involved. And so the annual conference session themes based on the conference, vision and value statement were listed for the next 3 years. So this year was following Jesus. Next year will be thriving in community. And then year 2026, healing the world. So those are the 3 themes that they already lined up. And so Pastor Yoon gave example of local churches embodying the mission of Jesus. He lifted up our church, Watsonville First United Methodist Church, as an example of following Jesus. So they showed our pictures of our church and some kind of ministries that we do. And by the way, they picked our church because our district superintendent, Samuel Yoon, selected our church, because each district was to select a couple of churches, and we were one of them. So our church was highlighted with pictures. So there were fixing of appointment of each of 5 districts, included a celebratory song as well as prayer and laying on hands. So throughout the conference, they'll take, so El Camino Real District Superintendent Samuel Yoon will read off churches, and then Bishop Carcaño will read off name of a pastor who was being appointed. So they'll say, Watsonville First, John Song. And so then I get up. So after all the local churches' appointments has been announced, and all the standing clergy who are appointed to that district, then they invite all the people who are sitting near to come and lay their hands. So people will surround me, laying their hands, and then Bishop will pray for these new appointments. So that's how it's done at the conference. Next picture. I'm sorry, the one before. There. Okay, so there's a missing picture. Okay, anyway, go ahead. Put the next picture. So this is a Board of Pension and Health Benefit report given by Executive Director Paul Ekstrom Fernandez. So he is our Executive Director of Board of Pension and Health Benefits. And his office is in Sacramento. And the recommendation for 2025 minimum salary was presented by the Commission on Equitable Compensation with the list of scale from 1 to 15 plus years. The committee recommends a 3.3% cost of living increase ranging from 1st to 5 years minimum salary set at $52,603 to 15 plus years maximum minimum salary set at $59,178 for next year. And it passed unanimously. So who is Ekstrom Paul Ekstrom Fernandez? Well, he and I go back beginning of my ordination. His wife is Renee Ekstrom, and his name is Paul Fernandez, and his father was a district superintendent of our conference. And they married, and they then hyphenated their last name, and so their children have to spell out the long names. Ekstrom Fernandez, hyphenated. So next picture. That's his daughters. So this is our first home we bought when I was serving at Pittsburgh, it's East Contra Costa County. And it's the front yard. And so his aunt and parents were attending Pittsburgh church. So Renee Ekstrom Fernandez, who's retired now, she was a Methodist clergy, and Paul will frequent, Pittsburgh to visit their parents and aunt. And so kids will come, and my daughter, she's on the right. So I think this was 1992, year 1992. So the one on the left is Daniela, and she's now a veterinarian and married and has a 15-month-old daughter. And then the older daughter name is Ilana, and she's an investor in San Francisco, and she has two little boys. And their mom, Renee, is totally involved in their lives. They're their grandkids. And Paul, as he was having lunch with me, saying, she has left me. She's like fully committed to being a grandma to 3 grandkids. So that was what was happening. And the interesting dynamic, so the older daughter, so Ilana was the oldest, and then Hannah was 1 year younger, and then Daniela was 1 year younger than Hannah. But when those three got together, Ilana, Hannah will and they will kind of exclude Daniela. And Daniela will just cry because she's being excluded. And then her parents will intervene. That is not the way to do it. So anyway, that's kid stuff, but I have a fond memory of them. All right. So final day, Monday, there was a call to wholeness, was presented by the chair of the program, who was Deacon Susan from Willow Glen UMC. She is the Christian education minister as a deacon at Willow Glen in San Jose. And she's heading up this wellness ministry, wellness and wholeness, call to wholeness. And basically, this came out of concern for clergy mental health. Clergy were having some troubles with their mental health. Some will have medical leave because of health and obesity. Some clergy are not taking care of their health with their bodies. Too sedentary lifestyle. As well as, sometimes serving a church can be a very lonely place. So even though I'm in the midst of you, my role is a pastor. So it's not like it's a friend. You can never really be friends with your parishioners. And you have to set that kind of differentiation and boundaries. So if you need friends, if you need to take care of your social needs, that is beyond your relationship as a pastor and parishioners, you have to go outside and get it. And oftentimes, clergy who will get isolated in small towns and some out there in the country places, they're isolated, and they get into trouble with mental health and emotional wellness and so forth. So they created this Call to Wellness program, which is a 6-month program. They train you all the things that you need to do to keep your mind, body, and spirit healthy, and how to have social network of support. So they lifted up all the clergy who have gone through this 6 months program, and so they were encouraging that. And after that, the bishop said, "Well, does anybody want to, say something about this after Susan's presentation?" So I raised a yellow card. Mic number 2, yellow card, and so I went to the mic. So next picture. So on the floor, I spoke, and my first statement was, "I'm a John Song from Watsonville, and I'm a survivor of 2 major episodes of depressions with suicide ideation." And people going, "Oh." And then I shared how it's easy to get isolated serving churches sometimes. And, I have this propensity to be a lone ranger. And I shared about how you overestimate your ability to handle And then it's like a frog being in a warm water and slowly, raising the temperature. And then you don't know, but until you're in trouble. So I had 2 major episodes. The first one lasted a little over a year. And I had to take, I think, 3 months leave of absence. And then the last one happened when I was in Central Valley 5 years ago. Yeah, 5 years ago, 4.5 years ago. And so that lasted about like 8 months. And so I had to take a medical leave. And if you see me now, he says, "No way, Pastor John, you look so good." No way, you could have been like that. But I was dead like a Lazarus, came back to life. So here I am. And so I was sharing about that, and I said, one of the things that happens as a pastor is trying to meet the demands and expectations of the parishioners of what their pastor should be and ought to be. And sometimes you abandon yourself in order to meet those expectations. And when you show up not being true to yourself, then you're not authentic. And so when you do that, what happens is that first of all, you're harming yourself. And then you're harming the people that you serve, people that you have relationship with, and you're harming the world when you show up not being true to who you are. And I said, unless we come home to ourselves and be authentically ourselves and show up true to who you are, until then, you're not giving your best. And then I quoted the 20th century giant, spiritual giant, African-American pastor and a mystic. His name just eluded me. How can his name eluded me? He's African-American. He was a spiritual advisor to Martin Luther King Jr. He served as a chaplain at the Boston College. Do you know what I'm talking about? Black spiritual giant of the 20th century. Howard Thurman. Howard Thurman. Okay, so this is what Howard Thurman says to his students, to young people. He said, "Do not ask what the world needs in terms of discerning your vocation, your career. Do not ask what the world needs. First, ask what makes you come alive. And when you find what makes you come alive, share your aliveness with the world. What this world needs are people who have come alive." So I said, "Bishop and the members of the conference, I have come alive, and I feel I'm having a time of my life, and thank God, God is not done with you yet." So there's a saying, there's a rule that when you find yourself in a hole, okay, here's a question. What is the rule when you find yourself in a hole? Stop digging. That is a sermon, isn't it? So anyway, I share that with you. So the closing of the 176th session of ACS with the benediction of the bishop. And she said, "I pray that you will look forward, I pray that you will look toward your future in prayer and conversation with one another, listening to those around us who speak about what the world needs. Go forth knowing that you are held in the embrace of God's own. Final picture. So I was staying at the Sheraton Hotel, and it's right adjacent to the convention center. And that's where we get a discount rate as a conference from the Sheraton Hotel. And so that's where I was staying. I was on the 16th floor. And when I was looking out one evening, there was a fireworks going on. You see the fireworks by that dark in the center? It was just going on for a while. I said, why? What? It's not 4th of July. What's going on? I could only think, is there like a Sacramento team that won a game, and so they're celebrating? Anyway, I had no idea what it was. But there it is, my experience of the conference, and I hope you kind of vicariously felt you were there experiencing it.
Talking with my Father, He's talking with His Son. I don't need to look any further for the one I have become. He says, listen to that curlew. That's a sound I love to hear. It's a strange reflection that we look through that finally finds us here. In this place where life's heart thunders, in this place where time holds still, in this place of harmony and wonder and values not of gold fulfill. Walking with my Father across these interlaken hills. It's timeless mysteries that we gather, make the memories that we fill. He says, don't fix what is not broken. No need to find what's not been lost. It's a heavy gate we have to open, endless fields we have to cross. In this place where life's heart thunders, in this place where time holds still, in this place of harmony and wonder and values not of gold fulfill. There will always be the brave one, be the one who turns away, with all too many things left undone, and so much left to say. I'm talking with my Father, He's talking with His Son. I don't need to look any further for the one I have become. In this place where life's heart thunders, in this place where time holds still, in this place of harmony and wonder and values not of gold fulfill. Father. He's talking with his Son. I don't need to look any further for the one I have become. For the one I have become. Thank you.
May the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ and the Father who emptied himself to become us, and the wisdom, power, and the comfort of the Holy Spirit abide in you and escort you in the direction of coming into full union with the Trinity. Go in peace. Amen.